Los Angeles, California. The Beverly Hilton Hotel ballroom was packed. Thursday night, March 12, 1974. Over 300 guests filling the tables for the American Film Institute's annual gala. The chandeliers sparkling above. The champagne flowing freely. Hollywood's biggest stars mixing with directors, producers, and political figures in the kind of scene that made these industry events simultaneously the most glamorous and most politically charged gatherings in America. The conversation was loud, the laughter was louder, and nobody was paying particular attention to the table near the stage where Muhammad Ali sat with his wife, Belinda, watching the award ceremony with the quiet intensity that characterized everything Ali did when he wasn't performing for cameras. Nobody noticed, that is, until Clint Eastwood stood up from his reserved table at the front, his face flushed red from expensive wine and from something else, something darker that had been building in him all evening as he watched Ali receive standing ovations every time the cameras panned to him, and began walking, no, marching, across the ballroom toward where Ali sat today. His publicist scrambling to follow him, other guests turning to watch because Eastwood's body language, rigid and aggressive, made it clear something dramatic was about to happen. What happened in the next 90 seconds would be captured by 3 television cameras, witnessed by over 300 of Hollywood's most powerful people, and become the most controversial moment in entertainment history. A moment so shocking that the footage would be suppressed for years. A moment that would end one man's reputation and elevate another's legacy. A moment that proved courage doesn't come from movie scripts. But to understand why what Muhammad Ali did next silenced an entire room and changed Hollywood forever, you need to know what Clint Eastwood said first. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear will absolutely shock you. And drop a comment telling me which country you're watching this from. I read every single one. Clint Eastwood reached Muhammad Ali's table and didn't lean down to speak quietly. Didn't pull Ali aside for a private conversation. Didn't maintain the pretense of Hollywood civility between two celebrities who were supposed to respect each other in public regardless of their private feelings. Instead, Eastwood slammed his hand down on Ali's table so hard the champagne glasses jumped and the silverware rattled, and he spoke loud enough that conversations at nearby tables stopped immediately. Loud enough that people 30 feet away turned their heads. Loud enough that the band playing soft music in the corner faltered and the melody died. "You've got some nerve showing up here tonight." Eastwood's voice cut through the ballroom like a knife. "You think dodging the draft makes you some kind of hero? You think refusing to serve your country makes you brave?" The entire ballroom went silent. 300 people stopped talking, stopped moving, stopped breathing because Clint Eastwood, the biggest action star in Hollywood, the man whose Dirty Harry films had made him America's symbol of tough justice, the actor whose very presence represented strength and patriotism, was publicly attacking Muhammad Ali using language that was turning heads and dropping jaws across the room. But Eastwood wasn't finished. "You're nothing but a draft dodger who got lucky in the ring," Eastwood continued, his voice rising. "You talk about principles, but real men serve their country. Real men don't hide behind religion and fancy words when their nation calls. You want to know what you are?" Eastwood leaned closer, his face inches from Ali's. "You're a coward with a big mouth. And the only reason you're celebrated is because Hollywood's full of people too weak to tell you the truth." Then Eastwood said it. The words that would define this moment forever. "You're just another loudmouth troublemaker who doesn't know his place in this country." The air left the room. People gasped. Some looked away in horror. Others stared, frozen, unable to process what they were witnessing. The racial undertone was unmistakable. The disrespect was absolute. And every single person in that ballroom knew they were watching something that would have consequences. Muhammad Ali didn't stand up. Didn't clench his fists. Didn't make any threatening gesture at all. He just looked up at Clint Eastwood with eyes that showed no anger, no fear, no reaction whatsoever to the insult. And then Ali smiled. That famous Muhammad Ali smile. The smile that came right before he destroyed someone. Muhammad Ali's voice, when he finally spoke, was so quiet that people at nearby tables leaned forward to hear it. So calm that it seemed completely disconnected from the fury Eastwood was displaying. So cold that several witnesses would later describe it as the most frightening thing they'd ever heard because it contained absolutely no heat, no emotion, just facts delivered with the precision of a surgeon cutting into flesh. "You finished, Clint?" Ali asked, still sitting, still looking up at Eastwood with that smile. "You got all that out? Because I need to know if you're done embarrassing yourself before I respond to what you just said in front of all these good people." The word embarrassing landed like a slap. Eastwood's face reddened further. "See, here's what's interesting to me," Ali continued, his voice still quiet, still calm. "You just called me a coward. You, Clint Eastwood, called me a coward." Ali paused, letting that sink in. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly." Then Ali stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. And suddenly the dynamic in the room shifted because Muhammad Ali, standing at full height, shoulders back, presence filling the space around him, was a different thing entirely than Ali sitting down. "You play soldiers in movies," Ali said, his voice slightly louder now, carrying across the silent ballroom. "I stood up to the real United States government and said no to their war. You pretend to fight on screen with choreographed punches and stunt coordinators. I'm the heavyweight champion of the world who's taken real punches from Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, and George Foreman, men who actually tried to kill me in that ring." Ali took one step closer to Eastwood. Not threatening. Just closing the distance. "You read lines written by other people telling you when to be brave. I speak my own words and face real consequences for them. I lost my title. I lost 3.5 years of my prime. I lost millions of dollars. I faced 5 years in prison." Ali's voice was steel now. "What exactly have you sacrificed, Clint? What have you risked? Your next movie deal?" The room was absolutely silent. People were staring, some with their mouths literally open, watching Muhammad Ali systematically dismantle Clint Eastwood's credibility with nothing but words. "You want to call me a coward?" Ali's smile widened. "Then let's talk about courage. Let's talk about who's really brave and who just plays brave on camera." And what Muhammad Ali said next didn't just destroy Clint Eastwood in that moment. It destroyed him for weeks, months, years in the eyes of everyone who witnessed it. Leave a comment right now and tell me, would you have stayed silent or spoken up like Ali did? And which city are you watching this from? Let me know below. To understand what happened next, to understand how Muhammad Ali turned Clint Eastwood's public insult into a cultural earthquake that redefined how Hollywood treated black athletes and activists for generations, one must understand what was going through Ali's mind as he stood there in that ballroom facing down one of America's biggest movie stars. Ali wasn't surprised by Eastwood's attack. He'd faced this kind of hostility his entire adult life. From the moment he'd announced his conversion to Islam in 1964, from the moment he'd refused induction into the armed forces in 1967, from the moment he declared "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," Ali had been called every name imaginable by people who believed their version of patriotism was the only acceptable version. Sports writers had called him a traitor. Politicians had called him un-American. Average citizens had sent him death threats by the thousands. But Ali had also learned something crucial through all those years of persecution. He'd learned that moral courage, the kind that comes from standing on principle even when the whole world tells you you're wrong, is more powerful than any physical courage. He'd learned that speaking truth, especially uncomfortable truth, especially truth that makes powerful people angry, is the highest form of bravery. And he'd learned that people who attack you publicly are usually operating from their own insecurity, their own fear, their own need to diminish others to feel larger themselves. Clint Eastwood's mistake, his fatal miscalculation in that moment, was assuming that his Hollywood status would protect him from consequences. Eastwood had built his entire career on playing men who solved problems with violence and intimidation. The man with no name. Dirty Harry Callahan. Characters who didn't talk much but commanded respect through sheer force of presence and the implicit threat of what they could do if crossed. But Muhammad Ali operated in a different universe. Ali had faced real violence, real danger, real opponents who wanted to hurt him badly. What was Clint Eastwood compared to Sonny Liston, a man who'd been a mob enforcer before becoming champion? What was a movie star's anger compared to the United States government prosecuting you for your beliefs? What was Hollywood disapproval compared to half of America hating you for refusing to fight in a war you believed was wrong? Eastwood didn't understand that Ali had nothing to lose. He'd already lost his championship. He'd already been stripped of his license to fight. He'd already sacrificed his prime-earning years. He'd already been vilified by millions. A movie star's insult? That was nothing. That was amateur hour. But Ali also understood something Eastwood didn't. He understood leverage. He understood that in 1974, the cultural landscape was shifting. The Vietnam War was ending in failure and shame. The civil rights movement had changed how many Americans thought about race and justice. Young people, the audience that studios desperately needed, increasingly viewed Ali as a hero and the war as a mistake. The moral ground was shifting under America's feet, and Eastwood was standing on the wrong side of history without realizing it. So when Ali responded to Eastwood's insult, he wasn't just defending himself. He was teaching a lesson. He was drawing a line. He was making an example that would echo through Hollywood for decades. "You talk about serving your country," Ali said, his voice now loud enough that everyone in the ballroom could hear clearly. "Let me tell you about service. Let me educate you about what it means to actually stand for something." And then Ali began to speak, and what he said would be quoted in newspapers across America the next day. "I served my country by telling it the truth," Ali said, his voice ringing across the silent ballroom. "I served my country by saying that war was wrong when everyone wanted me to stay quiet and just fight. I served my country by standing on my principles even when it cost me everything. That's service, Clint. Real service. Not the kind you fake on a movie set." Ali took another step forward. Eastwood, for the first time, stepped back. "You had a deferment during the Korean War, didn't you?" Ali asked. The question hung in the air like an accusation. "Yeah, I did my research. You got a deferment. You didn't serve. But now you're standing here in front of 300 people calling me a coward for refusing to fight in a war I believed was wrong." Witnesses would later say this was the moment Clint Eastwood's face changed. The anger drained out of it. Replaced by something else. Shock. Realization. The understanding that he'd made a terrible mistake. "You make millions of dollars playing heroes," Ali continued. "I gave up millions of dollars being one. You follow scripts. I write my own story. You act tough for cameras. I am tough in real life. And the difference between us, Clint, the real difference, is that when you go home at night, you know you're playing a role. When I go home, I know I stood for something that mattered." The ballroom remained absolutely silent. People weren't just watching anymore. They were witnessing something historic. The dismantling of an icon by a man who'd proven his courage in ways Eastwood never could. "Now, you can apologize right now," Ali said, his voice dropping back to that quiet, cold tone. "Right here, in front of all these people who heard you disrespect me. You can show some actual courage and admit you were wrong. Or you can stay silent, and tomorrow morning, every newspaper in America will print exactly what you said and exactly how you couldn't defend it when I called you out." Clint Eastwood stood there. Silent. His mouth opening and closing like he wanted to speak but couldn't find words. His publicist at his elbow, whispering urgently, trying to pull him away. The cameras still rolling, capturing every second of his humiliation. And Muhammad Ali just waited. Patient. Calm. Giving Eastwood the chance to do the right thing. 10 seconds passed. 20. 30. The silence was excruciating. Eastwood's face had gone from red to pale. His hands were shaking slightly. He turned and walked away without saying another word. Without apologizing. Without defending himself. Just walked away while 300 people watched and 3 cameras recorded his retreat. Muhammad Ali had won without throwing a single punch. If you believe standing up for what's right matters more than staying quiet, hit that like button right now. And tell me in the comments, which state or country are you watching this video from? By 7 a.m. the next morning, Friday, March 13, 1974, the story was on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. By noon, it had spread to every major newspaper in America. The New York Times. The Washington Post. The Chicago Tribune. All running variations of the same headline: Clint Eastwood confronts Muhammad Ali at Hollywood Gala, retreats in silence. The television footage, initially suppressed by the American Film Institute, Leaked within 48 hours. ABC News ran it. CBS ran it. NBC ran it. Americans across the country watched Clint Eastwood call Muhammad Ali a coward and then watched Ali systematically destroy that accusation with nothing but facts and moral authority. The public reaction was swift and definitive. Letters poured into newspapers. Phone calls flooded television stations. And the overwhelming majority sided with Ali. Even people who had disagreed with Ali's stance on Vietnam, even people who had called him un-American in the past, watched that footage and saw something undeniable. They saw a man who'd sacrificed everything for his beliefs facing down a man who'd sacrificed nothing, and they saw who had the real courage. Clint Eastwood's publicist issued a statement on Saturday. Mr. Eastwood regrets any misunderstanding that may have occurred at Thursday's event. The statement didn't apologize. Didn't acknowledge the specific words. Didn't admit wrongdoing. Muhammad Ali's response came within an hour. Speaking to reporters outside his training gym in Los Angeles, Ali said, "There was no misunderstanding. 300 people heard what he said. Cameras recorded what he said. He called me a coward because I stood up for my beliefs. And when I asked him to explain his courage, he couldn't. He just walked away. That tells you everything you need to know about the difference between real bravery and pretend bravery." The story refused to die. Day after day, it dominated sports sections and entertainment sections and even political sections of newspapers across America. 1 week later, Clint Eastwood held a press conference. He read a prepared statement. "I apologize to Muhammad Ali for my inappropriate comments. I spoke in anger and said things that don't reflect my true feelings or values. Mr. Ali is a remarkable athlete and a man of principle, and I was wrong to suggest otherwise." It was too late. The damage was done. Eastwood's tough guy image had been exposed as just that, an image. Ali had shown the world what real toughness looked like, and it wasn't anything Hollywood could script. Years later, in a 1990 interview, Muhammad Ali was asked about that night at the Beverly Hilton. "I don't hold grudges," Ali said. "I forgave Clint a long time ago. But I don't regret what I did. Someone had to show Hollywood, show America, that you can't disrespect people just because they stand for something you disagree with. Clint gave me the opportunity to teach that lesson, and I took it." What Muhammad Ali proved that night transcended sports or entertainment. He proved that moral courage, the courage to stand for your beliefs even when it costs you everything, is more powerful than any role an actor can play. He proved that real strength comes from conviction, not from scripts. And he proved that sometimes the most important fight isn't in a boxing ring. It's in a ballroom, facing down someone who thinks their fame gives them the right to disrespect you. One insult. One 90-second response. One man silenced. One legacy of courage that inspired millions. Muhammad Ali didn't just fight with his fists. He fought with his principles. And on that night in 1974, he proved which kind of fighting matters more. Subscribe right now for more untold stories of legendary figures who refused to back down when powerful people tried to put them in their place. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. And one last time, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching this from. I appreciate every single one of you.